Mario's first ever RPG is finally back and freshly polished. And this was the Mario game that hit players with a ton of curveballs. Bowser being an ally, the princess joining in on the adventure, new villains, Freakin Geno, and today we're ranking every Super Mario RPG character from good to evil. And as usual, we'll be starting with our most pure and noble character, before working our way down to the most evil. These characters are the good. And naturally, we have to give the gold medal of good to Mario. He might have an entire JRPG party backing him this time, but the man in red is still the one leading the charge to rescue Peach and then save the Mushroom Kingdom and eventually the world. As soon as that giant sword crashes into Bowser's Keep, Mario's off on his latest adventure to save everyone from the prospect of a world without wishes. He'll take a tumble down raging rapids, interrupt a wedding, and even jump into a volcano if that's what it takes to stop Smithy and his minions from wreaking havoc on the world. He's even willing to ally himself with Bowser this time, and even let the Koopa King toss him around as a weapon. The remake further adds to Mario's team's synergy, letting him act as a linchpin in all of the party's triple moves. It is true that if the player is so inclined, Mario can also engage in some home invasion or troll his friends when they're trying to railroad him, but we're not going to count those incidents against him. If there's one ally who can be counted on to always keep Mario on track, it's Gino, who takes our silver medal of good. This alien being from beyond the stars descends to Earth in its time of need. He inhabits the body of a doll and sets off to look for the pieces of the shattered Star Road. Gino is the one to inform Mario and Mallow of their real goal in pursuing the star pieces, and he tags along with them once he realizes that they'll be stronger if they work together. Gino might be a little preoccupied with the big picture sometimes, but even this possessed doll has his fair share of more human moments. He seems to be genuinely fond of Gaz, the little toad who owned the toy he's currently piloting around, and he doesn't object when the party engages in smaller acts of heroism, like rescuing a pair of kids trapped in a mine or ousting the false rulers of Nimbus Land. These actions coincidentally lead back to the star pieces more often than not, so it's possible that Gino understands that there are ways for the good guys to fulfill wishes, even without the direct power of the stars. Combined with his prowess with firearms and lasers of all sorts, Gino's been a fan-favorite character for many years for a reason. It's hard not to get choked up a little bit when he returns to the stars at the end of the game. And at least Gino's been popular enough to make a small number of cameos over the years. Poor Mallow hasn't been seen outside of Super Mario RPG ever since, but that doesn't prevent us from awarding this puffy little guy our bronze medal of good. Mallow begins as what we'd call an unlikely hero. Mario runs into him in the middle of a crying fit after he's had his money stolen by a thief. He takes a while to find his bearings as the party's squishy mage, but credit to Mallow for sticking by Mario even after learning about what's at stake. He takes the news of his adoption with surprise, but it fills him with a newfound determination to find his family. Mallow does eventually find his true home and liberates his parents and his people from the scheming Valentina. It's a tearful and rainy reunion all around. And Mallow takes his new place in the world as the Prince of Nimbus Land. Mallow also experiences the most character growth of anyone in the playable cast, evolving from a wet blanket somehow unable to realize that he isn't actually a frog, into a capable hero daring enough to do what he has to in order to save the world. No one's gonna push around someone who can so expertly command the weather. Just ask Croco. And now we get to the one remaining, unambiguously good member of Mario's party, the Mushroom Kingdom's very own Princess Peach. Super Mario RPG wasn't the first time that the princess took an active role in defending her people, but it did mark a major turning point in how she'd be characterized in many future RPGs and other Mario spin-offs. Peach finds herself captured not once, but twice. But once Mario rescues her from marriage to the deranged booster, she wastes very little time in slipping away from the castle to join the heroes on their adventure. She signs on as the party's premier healer, trading offensive capability for the versatility to heal and refresh the entire team, or even revive fallen allies. At least that's true for most of the game, but she'll eventually get her hands on a frying pan, which turns her into one of the party's strongest damage dealers as well. With or without her weaponized kitchenware, Peach is every bit as heroic as most of her allies. and we only rank her in the number 4 spot because she misses out on the early stages of the journey. Peach might take some notes from Toad on how to be more proactive. This plucky little mushroom guy may just be one of many of the royal family's identical retainers, but he sets himself apart right from the start by traversing a monster-infested path to meet up with Mario and find out what happened to the princess. He finds himself captured a few times on the way back to town, but even if Mario doesn't stop and help, Toad will get himself out of his predicament and make it back to the Mushroom Kingdom. The remake gives him even more to do, as when the action gauge is full and there aren't 3 party members available, Toad will show up and grant you one of several useful effects. His can-do attitude takes him far, all the way to the final boss in fact. Through sheer determination and what must have been a ton of running away from battles, Toad shows up in Smithy's factory to sell Mario and the gang essentials for their big battle with the factory boss. Forget everyone wondering what Luigi gets up to whenever Mario's off on an RPG adventure. We want to know what Toad went through to serve as the plumber's very own trans-dimensional vendor. Most of Super Mario RPG's other helpful NPCs are content to stay at home and offer their services to Mario when he comes to them. Jinx is one such individual, and his expert combat training will serve the party well as they head into the toughest fights the game has to offer. Jinx is a physical powerhouse who's mastered all manners of lethal techniques, and over the course of multiple rounds at his dojo, he'll push his protégés to their absolute limits. He expects a lot from his students, but Jinx is nothing if not a generous sensei. Defeating him 3 times will earn Mario and friends the Fighter's Own belt, which will boost its wearer's stats as well as guard against mortal blows. The remake sees Jinx challenge the heroes one last time, this time testing their teamwork and rewarding their skill with an item perfect for those who enjoy triple attacks. If Mario is looking for advice rather than hands-on training, we'll want to check in with Mallow's adoptive grandfather, the Frog Sage. The venerable amphibian holds court in Tadpole Pond, where he'll always be available to lend an ear to the heroes and suggest their next course of action. He can be blunt at times, and no doubt he's got a flair for the theatrical, but there's little question that the Frog Sage is one of the wisest creatures Mario and friends will encounter on their long journey. They may just need to bribe him every now and then with a cricket-based dessert. Finally, rounding out our good section, we have Jonathan Jones. This may come as a surprise, seeing as we're talking about a pirate shark who hoards a star piece for himself within his sunken ship. But Johnny's really not that bad of a guy. He seems to be taking his ship being attacked and sunk by a giant squid in stride, and he's happy to award his prize to the heroes once they defeat him in battle. Johnny's also a very honorable pirate, challenging Mario to a one-on-one duel and later coming to the party's defense when the villainous Spiridovich swipes the star piece for himself. And with the good section wrapped up, we now move into more neutral territory. The characters in this section fall in the gray area. And who better to start with than the big man himself, Bowser. Everyone can tell that the guy's struggling with an image problem after he's ousted from his own keep and most of his minions scattered to the winds. Mario finds Bowser at the base of Booster's Tower, crying his eyes out because someone else kidnapped Peach. It's hard not to take pity on the fallen king, even if he continually insists on referring to the rest of his party as his new minions for the sake of his fragile ego. We didn't just place Bowser in the gray area on account of how much he'd balk at being labeled good though. Multiple times throughout the journey, his allies will have to patiently remind the stubborn Koopa that finding the star pieces and defeating Smithy are in his own best interest. Bowser just barely edges into anti-hero territory in Super Mario RPG, kicking off an occasional trend in Mario spin-offs that would see Mario's greatest enemy being open to cooperation whenever it serves his selfish goals. At least we get to see a few touching scenes between the Koopa King and his minions, showing us that even if he's a poor excuse for a hero, he's really not such a bad boss. Check out, for example, Wiz Aupa, one of the many brainwashed minions Bowser will run across during the assault on his keep. This maddened Magikoopa will attack the party with spells and summons, but after his defeat, he'll come to his senses. He remains loyal to the Koopa King and will help the heroes on the quest by fully healing them whenever they stop by. Additionally, he conjures a treasure box that never runs out of coins. An infinite money cheat. Now that's some real magic. Meanwhile, down in Merrymore, there's a pair of bakers who inadvertently discovered how to bring life to their confections. Chef Tord and his assistant just want to bake the perfect wedding cakes for the Merrymore Chapel, But for reasons apparently unknown even to them, their skills are so incredible that these tasty treats become spell-slinging monsters. The overworked and short-tempered Tort might attack Mario and friends for disrupting the wedding, but it's kinda hard to blame him when he's poured so much of himself into the towering cake. Not so much for Bomme though. Here's a guy who will eat just about anything. This bizarre four-eyed creature hangs out in the hero's path, and when they dare to disturb his slumber, he'll assault them with weird magic and lashings from his massive tongue. Bomme's real weapon, however, is his insatiable appetite. When he's first fought in the sewers, he'll occasionally swallow Malo whole. And later on in his own temple, he'll seek to broaden his palate by sampling all of the party members. For this reason, we have to give Bomme the Gluttony Medal for his insatiable appetite. But we'll also give him the Sloth Medal because if he's not chowing down on adventurers, he's snoozing away in some remote dungeon. What a life. But Culex has it even better. Hanging out in a strange pocket dimension behind a sealed door in Monstro Town, just waiting to challenge powerful heroes. He claims to be an evil being from another world, but we never actually see him do anything bad. In fact, he's quite courteous whenever he faces Mario in combat, and will award the good guys accordingly should they prevail against him. Like any proper Final Fantasy-inspired boss, it takes Culex a while for him to reach his true ultimate form in the remake. He finally makes the leap to 3D in the postgame, and with his third dimension gains a massive stat hike, making him by far the toughest fight in the game. Next we have Knife Guy and Great Guy, a pair of killer clowns in Booster's service who will attempt to stall Mario and friends while Booster makes off with Princess Peach. The brothers might be little more than a roadblock at the time, but later on they return in a more helpful capacity. If Mario can win Knife Guy's game enough times, he'll be granted access to Great Guy's secret casino, where fabulous prizes are up for grabs if you're lucky and patient. The casino might be rigged in the house's favor, but if you stick with Great Guy's games long enough, it might be worth the frustration. We're not sure if monopolizing the Mushroom Derby counts as a racket, but we are fairly certain that Bshi might be the closest thing to an evil Yoshi. This dinosaur might be sporting some slick shades, but shutting down the races on Yoshi's Island so that he can be the undisputed champion is anything but cool. Mario will have to take advantage of Boshi's weakness for cookies, and beat the Brood at his own game if he wishes to reopen the Mushroom Derby to all participants. From button-mashing racing to an amateur bomb squad, Punchinello is out to test the team's stamina with his explosive payload. This guy is yet another of the odd denizens of Super Mario RPG just hanging out at the end of a dungeon. But Punchinello has gotten it into his head that he wants to be famous. How lurking deep in a mine surrounded by bombs, waiting to go off is going to get him famous is anyone's guess, unless he's trying to blow the whole place up with him inside. Punchinello doesn't learn from his first beatdown at the hero's hands because he's back with even more bombs in the postgame. He does though make a valuable hookup in Bowser, rewarding the Koopa King with his ultimate weapon, and hopefully paving the way for his own future success. We have to give him the Envy Medal, as if only he'd have turned around and rescued the mole kids trapped in the mine, he would have been a hero. But we guess some people are just not cut out for that type of fame. He could also try hitting up his neighbor Booster for tips, because that guy's famous enough to have his own tower and an army of sniffed henchmen, though this guy never seems to know what exactly is going on. He holds himself up in his chambers playing with his dolls and trains, but when Peach flies through the sky and lands on his balcony, he gets it into his head to marry her for some reason. Booster doesn't seem to know what a wedding is, or a cake for that matter, and even the concept of crying confuses him. But that won't prevent him from doing everything he can to foil Mario's rescue attempt, including dragging Peach up a hill, and all the way to the altar. That said, we can't place Booster in the evil category, because he backs away without a fight once he's gotten the celebration he came for, and in the postgame he's happy to award Gino with his ultimate weapon, if the heroes take some time to play with him. Though we will go ahead and give him the Darwin Medal for his general stupidity. With all the cool toys inside, it's a wonder that Croco never tries to rob Booster Tower. He's certainly not shy about stealing anything that's not nailed down wherever he goes, even when it comes to pilfering from the heroes. They'll have to battle Croco twice, once to get Malo's coin back, and again in the Moleville mines after he snatches all of Mario's coins. and later the party's items as well. They catch him red-handed in one more act of larceny in Nimbusland, but it seems that after that, Croco turns over a new leaf. He can then be found hanging out in Bowser's Keep, selling high-end armor and offering advice as payback for all the trouble he caused. His prices as a vendor may be a bit short of highway robbery, but we're still awarding him the Greed Medal as the game's premier thief. And with the gray area wrapped up, we now enter the dark side. These characters are the bad and the evil. Most of Super Mario RPG's irredeemably awful characters come to us from the ranks of Smithy's army. The Axum Rangers are a whole set of such baddies. A band of 5 Power Ranger knockoffs flying around in their airship and looking to grab a star piece for themselves. The Rangers can match Mario's party in numbers and in the variety of their abilities, and they're also packing a devastating beam attack from their ship as a secret weapon. That said, they're outstripped in villainy by the worst of the game's numerous unaffiliated antagonists. Valentina locks up the king and queen of Nimbusland and dupes the populace into believing that her avian minion Dodo is the missing heir to the throne. In this way, she operates as the main obstacle getting in the way of Mallow's discovery of his true origins. But Valentina is much worse than simple kidnapping and fraud. She physically and verbally abuses Dodo at every opportunity, and she's prepared to throw down against the heroes when they get in her way. And unlike most other one-off bosses in the game, Valentina learns nothing from her humiliating defeat. Instead, she finds her way into Booster's company, and the two of them go on to play out one of the strangest weddings in video game history. And she's still even abusing Dodo in the ending parade. That poor bird needs to fly the coop ASAP. Valentina, meanwhile, is scoring herself a shiny gold pride medal for being so vain that she'll fill an entire castle with statues of herself. Regardless of taste, however, we're not sure anyone would want to display Clay Morton in their gallery. This strange creature riding what looks to be a combination of a sword and a pogo stick terrorizes the Mushroom Kingdom along with his legion of bouncy minions. They've invaded the castle and even the homes of the common folk, and Mario and Mallow will have to send Clay Morton bouncing out of there if they hope to restore order in their imperiled town. But let's move on to Speich, who claims the bronze medal of evil. The quaint seaside town falls prey to this conniving metal monstrosity, who locks up all of its inhabitants and impersonates them himself. In the guise of the village elder, Speich goads Mario into retrieving a star piece at the bottom of the ocean, something the plumber was planning on doing anyway. But I suppose it's always good to have some extra motivation. It's only after returning from the sunken ship that the heroes discover that they've been played, as Speich forces them to hand over their newfound treasure, lest he subject the real elder to horrific torture by tickling. But let's talk about another high-ranking member of the Smithy gang, the literally full-bodied archer, Bower, who takes the silver medal of evil. It's like this guy deliberately went out to one-up the schemes of all his comrades. Attacks on innocent town? Check. Finds a star piece and guards it from Mario and friends? Check. Devises a cruel and nightmarish punishment for his victims? Apparently just for the fun of it? Check. Bower hides out deep in the forest maze, firing off arrows that immobilizes the people of Rosetown, completely and totally where they stand. What's even worse is that Bower can hang out safely from a distance, with his targets not knowing when or where the next arrow will hit, until it's their turn to be frozen in place. But none of these baddies can measure up to their boss. Smithy easily nabs the gold medal of evil because from the moment he sends a giant sword crashing down into Bowser's Keep, everyone knows that this new villain on the block means business. Smithy doesn't make an appearance for most of the game, and in fact, first-time players might make the mistake of assuming that the aforementioned giant sword is the head of this dreaded army of sapient weapons. It's not until Mario and friends take the fight to Exor atop Bowser's Keep and get pulled into the dimension where Smithy's factory lies that they fully understand the reality of what they're facing. The weapons manufacturer might have the outward appearance of a metallic Santa Claus, but in a twist that predates Futurama's own Robot Santa. Smithy's anything but a jolly old soul. He destroyed the Star Road to ensure that wishes would never come true, leaving him free to flood the world with his weapons. His minions thoroughly demonstrate just how terrible that would be for everyone, and the world's prospects looks even worse as the heroes progress through the factory and come across endless copies of all their previous foes, all hot off the assembly line and ready for a hostile takeover. Smithy will keep his forge burning all through the final battle, crafting minions to fight at his side and even reshaping his own head to adapt to his opponent's tactics. Smithy is but the first in a long line of unique Mario villains who've left their mark on players, and taught Bowser that he needs to step up his game if he really wants to be the biggest, baddest guy around.